Australia's Nine Entertainment is set to acquire outdoor advertising firm QMS Media for $850 million while selling its metro radio stations, marking a bold shift towards digital growth as traditional broadcast revenues now decline. For more, let's head to Sydney. We're joined by Darren Woolley from Trinity P3, and a very happy new year to you. So much has been happening between 9 and 7. What is going on in the world of TV?
Thanks, Aaron. Yeah, it's been a big summer in Australian media, hasn't it? You know, we had the Seven West SCA merger just before the holidays, and during the holidays, we've now seen another merger or sell-off here with the acquisition of Outdoor by Nine and selling off radio. And look, it aligns with the data that's come in that said that outdoor media managed to hold its own compared to radio in the last quarter of last year on a year-on-year basis. So on that basis, it's probably a wise decision from their perspective.
Obviously, outdoor is pretty traditional. It's turned digital in many cases. Nine going back to the future, is it a good move?
Well, it's actually digital outdoor is much more sophisticated than people realise. It just hasn't been used to its full potential. And in many ways, we need to start thinking about these outdoor digital sites as more TV screens, because you can actually run video on them as part of the outdoor. So think of it not so much as the old 24-sheet poster as actually a digital screen that you can display on.
How does Nine, I guess, plan to finance it though?
And that's the interesting part, you know, because obviously selling off their radio, which they've always struggled with, you know, you would think it was a natural fit with a news business and the publishing arm that was Fairfax being brought in, that radio was a natural extension. But I think they really struggled with the radio platform, so selling that off has been sort of removing headaches. The interesting thing is that they've branded it Nine Outdoor. They're planning, from all of the publicity that they've put out, they're planning to drop QMS as a brand. And I'm just wondering, how is that going to impact all their competitors that use outdoor quite significantly? I mean, I'm not sure 7 Network or 10 Paramount are going to feel comfortable having their outdoor sitting on a site that's branded Nine.
Yeah, it's interesting to watch. I mean, I guess Nine Radio went through the same thing when they bought it, where there were so many ads and agreements with different networks and newsrooms. 7 News would advertise on 3AW, etc. So they've probably already gone through a bit of that. But what I guess is the reason they're getting out of radio, because that's been pretty catastrophic, you'd have to say, for the radio divisions. There's been a lot of uncertainty, also I guess a lot of frustration and anger, and having worked at some of these radio stations, there's a lot of opinions in these places.
Yeah, and I think that's the point. I think that Nine has struggled with the celebrity shock jocks, as they were called, and that generation of shock jocks moving on and a new generation moving in. I don't think they've quite got their head around how to manage that and how to commercialise it fully, which is why, from their point of view, it's not just offloading radio, it's offloading a lot of management headaches that came with it. Having said that, it's actually quite straightforward, and I think the buyers of the Nine Radio group, the Loundies, are actually going to be quite good at managing it, because in many ways there's a lot of similarities between running pubs and running radio stations with lots of opinions.
And probably the same demo as well. Talk to us about restructuring regional TV.
Yeah, well, and that's interesting, because as part of all this, there's been a need to change their regional TV profile, and they've become a metro-only network. Whereas what we saw with Seven West and Seven West Media is that they actually embraced regional to become what they called a whole-of-nation broadcaster. Nine's gone the other way and offloaded their regional TV interests to become a metro-only advertiser. And they're backing the fact that they feel that investors, again, are more interested in metro performance because of the concentration of audience. I think what we're seeing here is also a fundamental shift. There was a time when media owners were very much passionate about media and had a real hands-on interest. What we're seeing now is Australian media is largely being taken over by investors and accountants that are looking for the best shareholder option rather than necessarily the best media option.
Yeah, and of course, Nine used to be owned by a Kerry, Seven was owned by a Kerry. He's stepping down very soon as chairman of the new entity. Without that, what do you think the future looks like for Australian television when it is now, as you say, run by accountants and investors?
Well, and I think there's a real reason for that, because what's happened in the Australian advertising industry is that the big platforms, the Metas, the Googles and the ByteDances, and Amazons as well, are extracting huge amounts of advertising dollars. What we're seeing every quarter is that their ad revenue's standing up, whereas it's at the expense of things like news media, magazines. Magazines, we saw Australia's Cosmopolitan publisher go into liquidation over the summer as well. So, what we're seeing is that the traditional media is being left hung out to dry by the big platforms just soaking up the advertising budget. So you probably need someone that's much more strategic and return focused if they're going to survive in even the medium to long term.
All right, Australia's agency, I guess, new business market is rapidly polarising as well. New data out revealing that specialisation, not size, is now the key to winning work as marketers rethink how they build agency rosters. This is a big report and study you guys have been behind. Talk to us about its findings and I guess the biggest forces driving change.
Okay, so what we're seeing is that the advertising market's become a two-speed market or a barbell. At one end, we've got the big holding companies, the network agencies that are often global, though there are some local holding companies like Ahron. They're working towards coming up with a single plug-and-play solution for very large marketers. But at the other end, what we're seeing is this growth in the independent agencies, which are small to medium size largely. Once they get too big, they get bought by the big networks. And they're actually differentiating themselves and being very successful competing on being specialists. Now, that could be a specialist discipline like social media or influencers or content creation, or it could be specialists in particular categories like hospitality or travel or the like, tourism. And so what we're seeing is that growth in these independent specialist agencies who are competing because they're much more agile and able to fit in and fill the gaps that either the in-house agencies or the big network agencies can't do.
Is it basically really great people at their jobs, leaving the big agencies, starting boutiques, finding a niche, making it big? Is that what we're talking about here?
It was, but what's happened is that independent categories become so competitive that they've now they can't just replicate what they did in the big agencies. You can't say we're like them but smaller and cheaper or more nimble. What you've got to do is find your specialty and really hone that and focus on it so that you get plugged in to these opportunities, and they're arising all the time.
And I guess how do they then create these new gaps that external agencies need to fill?
Well, that's happening naturally. As we get more and more media channels, more and more opportunities, marketers are looking at trying to find the best way of connecting with their audience. And so these are arising all the time. To think that 5 years ago, yes, social media is around, but now we're seeing a big increase, 15 tenders in the last 12 months, which is a significant increase just for social media specialists, people that really get how to target an audience and engage them on social media. Now, many of the big agencies offer those services, but it's bundled in with everything else and not seen as a true specialty. Yeah,
and I'd imagine that clients are pretty happy here too.
Yeah, well, they've got more choice.
Yeah, very much so. All right, obviously Trinity P3 is a place to go. You guys put out some great work there. Always appreciate your insights. Darren, great to see you on Ticker once again. Talk soon.
Thanks, Ahron.